Kind of want to get through this quick tonight. I got a lot of baseball work to do. So.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. We are live with the late night DC and the Sunshine Man, but the Sunshine Man had something to do, so so it's you and I, Dave.
He's in a fantasy draft.
Fantasy baseball draft. That's right.
Mine are already done, so I'm in a couple of auction leagues, and I haven't checked to see how I did today. But in the real world of baseball, we're off to a good start, so I'm pleased with that.
2 days in. Saw you had the White Sox first half today.
Yep, and had to unduly sweat that one. It was 7-1, and then it became 7-4, and then it became 7-6. Adam Eaton with just an awful error in right field, and they got out of it. So I'll take the win. Still unbeaten on the young season. That's only on 3 plays, though.
Yeah, I liked them too, and I actually I went over to see what you had. Just looking for some stuff to talk about, and I saw that you had looked at the starting pitching, and he I read what you wrote, but he also has just a tremendous history against that team too.
That's something people should not pay much attention to, because it's not against this team. It was against other Angels teams.
No,
he hadn't pitched there in like 3 years. So I mean, that's old stuff. People get trapped with that all the time in baseball handicap. Well, this so and so's 9-2 against this team. Yeah, but he's not 9-2 against this lineup.
Do you think that it helps a veteran to know the dynamics of the ballpark if they once pitched in that previous division?
The dynamics of the ballpark aren't even the same. Since the last time he pitched there, they made a change in the outfield. That ballpark is a little more hitter friendly than it used to be, and the ball seems to be carrying better as well. It's just, look, if somebody else wants to, I never tell anybody how to handicap. I just talk about how I do it. I'll glance at it, but it's not something I deem as meaningful. It's basically too small a sample in most cases. You know, with a guy like this, well, he's been around for a long time, so maybe you can read a little more into it. But again, there was no real recency. So for me, it was other factors that pointed to it. And quite frankly, on those other factors, he did deliver kind of as he usually does. Keuchel's pretty good first 2 times through the lineup. He gets third time through the lineup. And I thought La Russa did a really good job not leaving him out there long. He faced 2 batters, I believe. Or was it 1? He faced 1 batter third time through the lineup. And it's like, see ya, out of here. I know your history. And that's good managing. And it basically saved the game because he was about to get crushed. So that worked out. But I think everybody's focus this weekend is on the Final Four. I mean, that's the main topic. We're on the verge of getting, I think it's fair to say, the game most college basketball fans wanted before the season started, because the 2 top teams were projected to be Gonzaga and Baylor. And we're now 1 game away, or 2 wins away from that happening. And as a fan, I would like to see that happen. I want to see that Monday night.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's a matchup we all are hoping for. I think it's the matchup that everybody deserves. Not to take anything away from, Houston or UCLA, but I mean, they were supposed to meet earlier this season. Gonzaga came down with COVID issues. They had talked about bringing it to Las Vegas with BD Global Sports. They were gonna bring that game here. There was like a 6-day window where both teams could have made it. I want to say it was after Christmas, but that couldn't happen. And then they get into league play and everything else. So I think Monday night it's sort of, this is what it's come down to. This is how many times somebody's asked you on the radio, guest, wherever. It's one of the things we kept hearing throughout the season and toward the the early end with futures was, you're going to bet Gonzaga, Baylor, or the field. Gonzaga, but which one would you rather have?
I believe I said Gonzaga.
Yeah, I said Gonzaga. Anytime I'd hear that.
Well, it wasn't a particularly good bet. I didn't make the bet, but somebody asked me. I had Gonzaga as my number 1 team, and I think Gonzaga is going to the finals. Look, UCLA, great story. Mick Cronin's done a great job with a limited roster. They lost 2 really important players. early on. And at that point, UCLA was pretty much, okay, well, have a nice season. See you next year. And they've just done a phenomenal job in this tournament. And what they've done so well is they've brilliantly slowed down the tempo of some teams that really like to get out and run, most notably Alabama. That's a 65-65 game at the end of regulation. That is clearly not the kind of game Alabama wants to play. They really mucked it up in the Michigan game and managed to pull that out. The problem here is that nobody has shown the ability to slow Gonzaga down. And I don't think there's any way in the world that UCLA can stay with them in a fast-paced game. So I look at this, and I want to disclose this. I had a very good football season. I'm having an almost great hockey season. I'm off to a good start in baseball. I was not good in college basketball this year, so take this with the entire canister of Morton salt. But I don't think UCLA can slow them down. And if that's the case, they might hang around for a while, but I think they're going to get run out of the building in the second half. Plus, Gonzaga's already played at Lucas Oil, so they're familiar with the sight lines. I just don't. If the Bruins can hang in here, then I'll be dead wrong. I'm not making a big bet on it because it's 14 points, and that's. But the only side I can play personally is Gonzaga.
Yeah, no, I don't see the defensive efficiency from UCLA. On the overall, even with momentum built up. I just don't see it. It just doesn't add up, doesn't equate. I don't see the personnel in dealing with Gonzaga's depth. I mean, if he wanted to, he could go, 3, 4, 5 players deep, 4 players for sure deep on the bench at any given time if he needs to, which he's actually shown he hasn't. And his preference, I think the last 2 games have been just going too deep. So 7 players, 7-man rotation. A couple of guys are getting in toward the end, but he can rely on 9 if he needs to at any given time, and that's what's damaging. The one strength, if you look at the analytics of UCLA, it's a decent rebounding team, but Gonzaga is always getting the high percentage shot, or they're getting hot from the outside, so they're not going to miss a lot of shots.
They're shooting 63% on twos.
Yeah,
that's absurd. How do you stop that?
You don't. I mean, that's the problem. And they can run any kind of offense they want. They can, the ball movement, they can drive and kick on you. I mean, it's just a machine. And that's why we're hearing all this chatter, leading up to this week about it. Where does this rank? Where does this team rank?
And that's a great question. And I want to get some audience input on this. I think it's fair to say if they complete the season perfect, they'll be the first team to have done that since Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers. I have always thought to this point the most dominant college basketball team I ever saw didn't win the national championship. That was the Rebels team that got upset by Duke the year after they ran them out of the building. But the next year, they were perfect at that point, and they, to this day, remain the most dominant college basketball team I've ever seen in a single season. Now, the one exception to that might be the Alcindor teams at UCLA, but the field was so much smaller then.
Yeah,
the competition really was not very good back then. So I don't want to take away from the Alcindor teams at UCLA because they were incredible, but I mean, the college basketball world was a lot smaller back then. So I think it's apples and oranges. If Gonzaga runs the table and they do it impressively, do we make them the most dominant college basketball team ever? I think there's an argument for it because even in the UNLV days, there wasn't the parity that there is now in college basketball. For a team to have run off potentially a perfect season and almost all by dominant margins in this time frame, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, they're and like you said, is the team that challenges Gonzaga for that title, if they finish it, the 90 team or the 91 team? Because there are those that say the 91 team was better than the 90.
It was. I mean, I would have made the 91 team probably a 4 or 5 point favorite over the 90 team. But they didn't win at all. So, that kind of knocks you out of the conversation. You have to win it all, and they had one bad game, and there was a terrible charging call on Greg Anthony, which to this day is absolutely awful call. Might have cost him the game, but that's another story. It was on Anderson Hunt. Excuse me.
Anderson Hunt, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's we have Baylor and Houston. We talked about Houston last week. Houston its most dominant defense it's ever had in program history against a very not only deep. Now the thing about Gonzaga, they have some experience. They have a couple of veterans, but the class is spread out.
Mhm.
Baylor is experienced. They have a lot of upperclassmen. I got to watch them a couple times live here in Vegas. While their coach was in COVID protocol, Drew was in protocol, so they were being coached by the assistants to start the season. And that's just an impressive machine. And I think I said this last week. If I thought then, if they would have met in Indianapolis, that Baylor would have beat them.
And that's not something I'm going to make a big argument about. And listen, if it comes to Baylor and Gonzaga on Monday, or even if it's Houston Gonzaga, all the pressure is going to be on Gonzaga, all of it. And the other team, particularly if it's Baylor, they're going to be relaxed. I would think, they'll be able to embrace that underdog role, as Duke kind of did in the 91 game. I mean, I thought Duke played over their heads that game. The Rebels. There might have been some external circumstances that we can't prove, so we're not going to talk about them. But let's just say they didn't play a very good game. Look, Gonzaga could get caught up in the moment because it's all the pressure is going to be on them on Monday, assuming they are playing for the title on Monday. Would you agree with that?
I would. And the reason that I think that happens is because we've yet to really see a team come out and punch Gonzaga in the mouth and then continue to hammer them with haymakers and basically stand up to the bully. And Baylor is a team that would do that. Houston, I'm not so sure about because I think they're kind of one of those, they come out maybe overzealous on defense and Gonzaga don't know how to make adjustments. Baylor can do exactly what Gonzaga can do. That's what's scary. Well, and so if it comes out and, like I said, just meets a head on it from the jump and shows no intimidation, we got a game.
Of course, before we get to that, well, I think UCLA is not – I just can't see UCLA beating Gonzaga. I can certainly see Houston beating Baylor. And I'll point out that three of the very respected – I haven't checked the ESPN BPI or whatever it is, but Ken Pom makes Baylor 1 point better on a neutral court. Haslametrics makes them about 1 as well. And Bartovic, and these are very respected sites who do math modeling. There's no bias. Mm-hmm. And that's how they arrive at their projections. They make Houston 1. So this is a real competitive game based on what their numbers show.
What did your numbers show?
My numbers have sucked all year, to be quite frank. They just haven't been very good. My numbers make Baylor 5. So it's right about where the line is. But
I had Baylor 1.
I'd love to sit here and tell you, boy, I'm crushed up in college basketball this year. I didn't. My numbers have just not been good. I don't know whether it was because of the weird scheduling where teams were playing back to back. I have no idea. But it's from a numbers standpoint. I did okay on the games I analyzed, but my numbers, they just didn't prove out. And I don't trust them at this point. So I trust the other site's numbers more than I do. I haven't checked. I'm going to do it while we're right here. Shotquality.com, which is an outstanding site. They measure things a little bit differently, and I want to see what they came up with. I shouldn't give away their stuff because it's a subscriber thing. But
gotcha.
But
it's a good plug for them.
Well, yeah. If you want theirs, go to their site, okay? Because it's not free, so it wouldn't be fair for me to give it out. But they do things a little bit differently, and they've had a great season.
Wow. Okay. Well, I agree with you that Houston but Houston, what I'm saying Baylor has to do to Gonzaga is somewhat what Houston has to do. I just don't know if they can pull that off against that roster for 40 minutes. That's the thing. Baylor's an experienced enough team that can make the adjustments, even if Houston shuts them down, goes up by 10 or 12 or whatever it may be, and just, keeps them in the 20s or 30s like we saw last week, how Houston's just impressive defensively. But Baylor has the personnel, they have the experience, they have the know-how to make the right adjustments and fix that.
Well, and Houston they've enjoyed a dream draw. They really have. I mean, they have not faced a great basketball team yet, and they're facing one tomorrow. But here's the flip side of that is Kelvin Sampson is one of the best game planners around. And he doesn't have a full week because they played early in the week, so it's less of a time span as usual for the Final Four. But he's still had a few days to implement whatever he wants to do. And he very rarely gets it wrong. Kelvin Sampson, I don't know whether it's because, he lost the Indiana job because of the texting that he wasn't supposed to do to recruits. But he is, in my opinion, for what that's worth, has never gotten his just due as a head coach. I think he's one of the truly elite head coaches in college basketball. And I'm not going to be surprised if he finds a way to get this to the wire against Baylor. And if he does that, it becomes pick'em.
I'm looking at Houston. The entire season, they haven't necessarily, outside of a couple of tough conference games, they played Texas Tech early, right? They beat them by 11, and they haven't really until down crunch time, and then they went to the conference tournament. They got by, they squeaked one by Memphis, then they crushed Cincinnati, and then you're right. Through the tournaments, Cleveland State, scrappy Rutgers, Syracuse with Boeheim, and then an Oregon State team that made its run, sort of doing what Houston did is still doing. Oregon State's doing. I don't know how many people actually had Houston here. I know there were some people who had it in their bracket. I saw some people talk about it.
They're a two seed, right?
Yeah,
2 or 3. I can't remember, but
I just don't know if they're. I'm talking in terms of their. If people thought maybe that was one of the ones that would get toppled and get upset because their lack of offense, but their defense has just stood up. They've proven, what the numbers have been showing it when they needed it, in the big time. I mean, this is where you're putting it all to the test. So we'll see tomorrow, like I said, if they can get Baylor on its heels and sort of frustrate them defensively. But that's just such a balanced team.
I think Houston's going to go out there and try and punch them in the mouth and see how Baylor reacts.
Yeah,
but Baylor is built to punch them right back.
Yeah,
this could be a real physical basketball game, and again, it might turn into a game where the tempo gets slowed to a crawl. Houston doesn't want to play fast. Baylor can play. Baylor's more versatile; they can play any way they want.
Yeah.
If Baylor's able to speed the game up, I don't think Houston can beat them. But I have a feeling Houston's going to be able to turn this into a slugfest, and I'm not betting the game. I can tell you that because I have no idea what to do in this game. I'm not going to be surprised if this is a last possession game. In fact, I kind of think this is going down to the final couple of minutes.
They're gonna be dealing with an offense that scores 83 points a game, ranked 6th in the nation, and they're Baylor. I mean, it's hard to argue against that Big 12. I mean, they definitely have the schedule strength on them. It's just. But this is it. I mean, you get this far. I think you kind of have to throw a lot of that out. I mean, otherwise we'd be sitting here talking about UCLA Pac-12 against Gonzaga. And I mean, it comes down to the talent. The one thing I like about Baylor is there's no standout star per se. If you look up and down their averages, any one of them can step up, and it's so well balanced that even down to whoever, somebody's scoring 5.7. Vital's are averaging 5.7, but at any given time he can step up. He's averaging 6.7 rebounds. So I mean, the same token, they're up and down that lineup. They all play their roles well, and at any given time, one of them can step up with their offense and fire and ignite that team. So that's where that diversity and that experience and that depth comes in.
I have a feeling we both think Gonzaga is winning it all.
I definitely think Gonzaga is winning it all.
So do I. man. But I do hope it's Gonzaga Baylor. From a fan standpoint, I don't know that I'll even bet the game on Monday. I don't have to bet something to enjoy it. I like it in fact, sometimes I wish I wasn't betting a game that I'm watching because it turns out to be not as enjoyable. But if I do anything on a Gonzaga Baylor matchup, it's probably going to have to be Gonzaga. I think they're that good, and we'll see what happens. Want to talk some? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to switch gears and talk a little Golden Knights.
Okay, let's do it.
We're getting very close to the trade deadline.
Yeah.
It's basically a week away, 8 days, I guess. What's your sense in terms of, are they going to go out and do something, and what do you think it's going to be?
Well, if they do anything, they're going to have to get a center, a third line center. They're going to have to get somebody, to bolster the offense and keep that flow going. That they've never really had a solid third line. If you think about it, that's always been the line that's been in question, and it's either because of injury or inconsistency, and that's going to be an Achilles heel, as we're seeing against a team like Colorado that can stand up, even though they won that second of the two games. The Kings come in and handled them.
They've split the 6 games.
Yes.
So, I'll sit here and agree with you that I think Colorado's better than the Golden Knights, but it's 3-3. And the Golden Knights have rebounded each time with a very impressive performance. So there's a grit on this team that I think turns it into a long series with Colorado, even with the rosters as they're configured right now. And if the Golden Knights win the division and get the home ice advantage,
yeah,
I mean, they're going to be tough to knock off, even though I think Colorado's a little better team. But the home ice advantage at the Big Phone, it's strong. It's real strong. And there's probably going to be more fans then. There's almost certainly going to be a lot more fans in the building then than there are now. So it's going to get louder and louder as time goes on. I don't think there's a better home ice advantage in the league.
Yeah, the word is that Foley and his crew they've already begun the logistics as they get closer to get the 9,000 in there, so they can get the 50%. And it's just a matter of spacing out the right pockets and groups of people and how they're going to do it. So I'm sure that they'll have something in place. They have to. I mean, there's you have the opportunity to get this far, and we'll be closer to a couple more months. I think right now I just saw a graphic on TV or on Twitter from the TV station reporting a press release that 7% of Clark County is vaccinated.
I'm halfway there. I have my second one scheduled in, I guess, about 2 more weeks.
I go in the morning. I found a place right down the street from my house, 3 miles from my house, that has I got
a Walgreens right down the street.
I think they said that, well, they announced, I got an email from the city of North Las Vegas at the location in the morning has the Johnson & Johnson.
So you'll be one and done.
Hopefully they have it.
Now, I want to get back to Colorado for a moment. As far as I don't know if the Golden Knights are going to do something. I'm like 90% sure the Avalanche are going to go out and get a backup goalie, because that's their one real worry right now. If something happens to Grubauer, Johansson's not going to be the guy, and neither is the other kid. They to me have to go out and, I don't know, get Linus Ullmark or somebody along those lines, a quality second goalie, because anything can happen in the playoffs. Grubauer could hit a slump. Grubauer could get hurt, and they're not winning the cup without a good goalie. So I think that's something. I think the Avalanche are going to make a move for a backup goalie. I feel quite strongly about that.
It's a matter of who they go out and get. I wanted to say something. I wanted to go back real quick. One thing you had said about how they split. I remember those first 2 games here. If you remember, they were missing a few players. I believe it was because of COVID, right?
They were on the COVID. What it was. I don't know if it's COVID or just
injured. Landeskog was injured. I know that, but They were missing some
Yeah,
forwards.
they were missing a lot of guys, not specifically for those games, but they had a bunch of injuries in February. I mean,
No,
they
yeah.
were extremely shorthanded in February. Now basically everybody's healthy again.
Yeah, no, they were missing a couple because I remember I know Landeskog was out because we were sitting because I was in that Zoom and the Denver reporters were asking questions. What's his name? Bednar about his injuries. So I know that they were shorthanded. Not to take anything away, they did win just now in Denver, but I'm just saying once that Colorado team is healthy, and like you said, if they end up with the backup goalie with their mindset is that they're stacked everywhere, including their backup.
They
They're going to
need
be
to go
dangerous.
what they want. Ideally, what they need to do is get a Robin Leonard type,
Yeah,
who's a first string goaltender who would serve as the backup, but would be ready in the event of an injury or a slump. I mean, that's one area where the Golden Knights are just golden at this point, with Fleury and Robin Leonard as the backup. I mean, there's not a better tandem in the league.
No, not when they're clicking. And we're sitting here talking about these two, but Minnesota looked pretty good the other night while I was out there.
I think Minnesota's, for some reason, they seem to match up well with the Golden Knights, but I don't think Minnesota's. I think Vegas and Colorado are head and shoulders above the rest of the division, and I'd be shocked if it's not those two in the playoff finals as far as that division is concerned. St. Louis is still capable if they get guys back and Binnington gets hot. San Jose is playing really well right now with Martin Jones.
Yeah,
inexplicably has gotten red hot. Martin Jones was basically all but dumped earlier in the season. They actually were trying to get rid of him. He's playing really well right now. But those teams, Arizona, they're not winning. To me, I don't think there's much chance they're winning 4 games against either the Golden Knights or the Avalanche. They just don't have the makeup to do it. And Minnesota's power play is one of the worst I've ever seen. It's astonishing.
It's the worst in the league.
Yep. I think they've got like 5 power play goals on the road all season. It's
if that. I can't even think who was in. Oh, Talbot. He was amazing. Just amazing last night. Did you watch the game last night?
Yeah.
He was fantastic. But that's the thing is, if you mentioned earlier, Golden Knights need to win. I think that's another reason that they need to win the division, not just to have home ice all the way through, but if Minnesota sneaks in there as the 3, that's going to be a tough series because of the fact, whatever it is psychological in going up to Minnesota, they can't play for shit there.
Yeah, I definitely want to see Minnesota play Colorado.
Yeah,
because that's the flip side. I mean, they just got absolutely annihilated in the 2 games they played against the Avalanche. I think they got outscored 12-1. They're not beating that team. Colorado's way too quick for them. So I would love to get. I agree. I'd love to get Minnesota out of there.
Yeah, and then coming in 4th, it'll be like I don't know who's going to end up.
Does it matter?
No, but it'll be fun to watch that race just to because whoever comes in there is going to get beat by Colorado Vegas.
That's why finishing first really is important in the division. It's not just the extra home game. You get to face the 4th team. And the fourth team is, I think, unless there's some change between now and the end of the season, let's just say it's St. Louis. They're just not at the same level. They're just not. They have basically one really good line, and they're not getting a lot out of the rest of the team. I know they've had a bunch of injury problems, but this team just isn't as good as the team that made a somewhat improbable run 2 years ago to win this.
And let's not forget that didn't start till January.
That's right.
When Binnington jumped in. Yeah, because they were in last place.
They went on a hot streak that just didn't end. But they weren't a great team last year and were kind of unimpressive come playoff time, and they just haven't been a real good team this year. The line Perron's on is a really good line. They've got one of the line that, would assume that Tarasenko is going to get better with more games under his belt. But their 3rd and 4th lines really aren't all that daunting, and quite honestly, their defense is out to lunch sometimes. So I just don't see St. Louis as a real viable threat coming out of this division.
The Eastern Conference, the East Division. What do you see on that side? And Central?
Look, the Islanders, when they're playing Trotz's system, playing it right, and they'll have the occasional off game, but when they're playing it right, boy, they're tough to beat. And they've really handled some of the teams in that division. I mean, if they match up with Boston, they absolutely own the Bruins.
Yes.
And the Bruins, quite frankly, don't look like a real good team right now, because you talk about a team that's got a complete imbalance of production. They've got one great line, and it is a great line. It's arguably as good a line as there is in the league, the Bergeron line. And the rest of the team, not real good. I'll be curious to see what the Bruins do at the deadline. I think the Islanders are the team to beat coming out of that division. Washington will still be dangerous, but I don't know if the goaltending is there. And the Flyers, forget them. And honestly, I just don't think Pittsburgh's all that good. I know their goaltending has been a real surprise, but I'm not sold on them being that strong in the nets come playoff time. So if you're asking me, I think the Islanders are coming out of that division.
I think the Islanders are. I think the one thing that they have, if they win that division, if they take first, it's going to be dangerous to beat, because as of right now, they're 14-1-2 at home. The thing is that they've struggled more on the road than, given their record. Washington's a little more balanced. So, and with the experience, but I'm a Trotz guy. I like Barry Trotz.
How do you not?
Yeah. So I just think that the edge is clearly there. And, Washington is a bit of it's a strange duck, because, they got rid of their goaltending and
yeah, but
from just a couple of years ago, and now I don't.
It's better now than it was. I mean, Samsonov's a terrific player, and Holtby was right. Holtby was done. Okay?
But what I'm saying is, I don't know if it's there entirely. Like when they struggle, you look at they're giving up some goals at times, and it can get dangerous in the second half when you get into the postseason. So I'm not sure yet. I'm not sold yet if they have that all around game.
I think the one team I feel most certain about as a Final Four is Tampa, and I know Carolina is as good as they are at almost everything except one thing, and that's between the pipes. In the playoffs, that's so huge, and Vasilevsky is peerless. I think he's the best goalie in the league. Carolina is less certain in goal, quite a bit less certain, and I think that's the big difference. Other than that, I think Carolina can battle Tampa on even terms, but the guy in the goal is the key. And I make Tampa a decent favorite. Maybe not. Well, I'm not going to say a bettable favorite, because the price is reflective of this. But I think Tampa's. I'm going to be very surprised if they're not in the Final Four.
Yeah, and they're just so good on it from every angle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That, like you said, with their offense, their goaltender, their power play, they're one of the top 5. Penalty kill, top 10 team. Obviously they put the pucks in the net. Obviously everybody's big surprise is the Panthers this year. But once they get into the playoffs, and they're not going to get past Tampa Bay.
I don't think so. Although the guy behind the bench is pretty good come playoff time. Quenneville's got a rather great.
He's got a nice resume. Yeah, yeah.
And he's getting the most out of this team. And I guess the Panthers should be looked upon as a team that could possibly. I'll tell you what. By the way, if it comes down to Florida and Carolina matching up in a 2-3, how good is that?
Yeah, it's going to be a really good scrap. That could go 7.
And they might exhaust each other in the process.
Yeah, they would.
So if Tampa wins the division, they're going to have everything set up for themselves.
They'll have a path, and then up north, Toronto's distancing itself, but Edmonton's come along. Winnipeg's in there. That's it. Winnipeg and Edmonton tied for second right now with 47. Toronto up top. I don't think that anybody's going to overcome them, but
no, Toronto here. Winnipeg's got Hellebuck, who's so good he can make them competitive in any series. but I don't think the team is all that loaded. The big deal with Toronto is, can Jack Campbell first of all, can he stay healthy? Because he's been battling a knee issue. But the guy's playing phenomenal goal. But can he do it come playoff time? He will be facing that kind of pressure for the first time in his life. And we'll see how that holds up. I still think that Montreal has an excellent chance to win that division in the playoffs.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Look,
If
they've got Price, who everybody was ripping him. Carey Price looks like he's all done. He's been fantastic lately. And in the playoffs, Carey Price is going to show up. I think they're a real dangerous team. And some of their analytics also point to that, by the way. This is a good hockey team. They maybe have not done as well as they should have this year. And they're probably not going to win the division. But they're going to be in the playoffs. And that's a team that come playoff time, I might actually bet to win that division because I think they're capable of beating any of the other teams that are in there.
Ahead of time.
Capable of beating Winnipeg, capable of beating Toronto and whoever the other team is. Edmonton.
So what do we got? We're 10 days out. It'll be at midnight, tomorrow, 9 days out from the deadline.
Yep.
So we'll see what kind of major moves. Circling back with the Golden Knights, that would be the only move that I could see them making. And but what I will say this, as shocking as whatever move it's going to be, it's obviously going to be shocking. It's got to be big. I wouldn't put it past McPhee because we've seen him do it first few years at the deadline in making acquisitions. So nothing would surprise me with this guy.
Kind of would for me because I really think they feel they've got a team that can win the cup. And
I do too, and I think they're content with. But
adding something, adding a somewhat inexpensive piece who would fit in. I don't know that they. I'd be surprised if a really big name ends up out here.
Well, here's the alarming thing is the other night when those scratches happened, we talked to William Carlson, and he said, well, we knew, or he said it, I think he may have said it between periods. William Carlson had said that they knew about it and they already knew in their minds. One of the reporters asked him, was that a problem? He said, no, we could have, we knew what we were getting into well ahead of it. Mm-hmm. The fact that Cody Glass was in Arizona with the AHL team the night before, and if they knew that ahead of time, got him on a charter to, what is an hour flight, limbo over to the arena, and they didn't, and they're still getting him ready, and they, and as well as he's looked here or there, but now he's with the AHL team. For me, knowing that whole day that you're going to be that short and you're going with the shortened lineup against the Wild tells me that, that's an area that they're not going, that they could be active with, and anything's possible with McPhee.
Well, and I think that, I think this is fair. Cody Glass needs to improve on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. He's got a ton of talent, and he's already productive on the power play, but he gets a little lost in the D zone at times. That's inexperience. Cody Glass is going to be a really good NHL player for a long time. I don't think anybody's going to argue that one. So maybe that's a spot where they could be looking for a little bit of help, but it's not going to be. We're not. I don't think there's a superstar on the way here, and I don't think they're going to get a guy who it would possibly be. Look, I don't know what his problem is, but wherever Taylor Hall goes, the team loses. Okay,
yeah.
The guy's got all the talent in the world, so I don't think you're going to see a guy like Taylor. In fact,
No.
I understand that type of player is like, oh shit, Taylor Hall, because he's got a ton of talent. But I think if they go to somebody, it's going to be a real good chemistry guy who's not going to disrupt the mix.
No, and I agree with that. What I mean is a big splash. They're not going to get a top six forward because they're not going to go spend top six forward money for a third line center. What I'm saying is it's going to be.
They don't need it.
No, but they're going to get, if they get somebody, it will be a top third line center that will be a big enough spread like that. And we go, oh shit, that fits, that works. That's what I'm saying is that last 12th hour, 11th hour, 10th hour that McPhee pulls off. And, I don't think that we'll be going into the end of that day on trade deadline. When I say we, the local media, going, not worrying about something. We will have our ears perked. We'll be on email all day waiting just in case for something to break or come out.
Well,
McPhee.
One thing we can pretty much assume, they won't tip their hand beforehand.
No, not even close.
Not this team.
Not even fucking close. One of the interesting things that I'd like to see some of the viewers, listeners here in the chat room is I heard this on the radio a couple times. I know Tyler Bischoff brought it up. Is if you were going to make a move and you needed to clear up enough, would it be smart at this point to take a shot and get rid of the bankroll that of whichever goalie you deem to be the backup?
No. I don't think it would, and I don't think they will.
I don't think that they're going to do it. But
there's two reasons. One, you want two quality goaltenders. Okay, no offense to the guys playing with the Silver Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're not NHL playoff ready at this point. The other reason is, suppose you trade one of your, well, let's just say Leonard, because they're not trading Fleury. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they trade Robin Leonard. How bad would it be if you ended up against whatever team he lands on in the playoffs? You want that situation?
Yeah.
No thanks. No, because he wouldn't be. It's not like he's going to trade him. They're not going to trade him to Buffalo. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were going to trade him someplace, somebody who wants a goaltender for the playoffs. I don't see why you would take a chance strengthening a potential playoff opponent. And that's exactly what you'd be doing if you were to deal Robin Leonard. No, you've got a position. You've got the best goaltending tandem in the league. I do feel confident in saying that. There's a couple that are in the discussion, but I don't think there's any better than this combination. And I don't think you break that up.
I tell you, I tweeted this out. It was a little concerning the other night. Was it Eriksson Ek that barreled into Leonard?
Yeah.
And it took a little slow getting up, and he kind of just had his head hanging there, and you're thinking, man, this guy's had 3 concussions already. He's just coming off of his third in his career, third in his career. Yeah. We haven't heard anything yet. So I'm curious what they'll say, or if he's fine, if he's okay, if nothing happened, because, it's something they never tip their hat with.
I think he just, he got the crap knocked out of him for a second. It's part of playing the position. They're used to it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he seemed all right a couple minutes later. So hopefully everything's okay. And then, look, they're not going to take any chances. The NHL's been pretty good about making sure that guys who are concussed it's recognized as such.
All their protocol, yeah.
Yeah, they've done a good job with that. It's been fun. It's been a fun league to watch this year. And look, there's still the only thing I'm disappointed in, and I know they can't do it in the playoffs. You've got to go with the traditional format in the playoffs, but 3-on-3 in the regular season, it's so much fun.
Yeah,
it can be the worst two teams in the league. They get the 3-on-3, and it is absolutely awesome for the most part. I also like, and I knew that was going to be good. And quite frankly, the old overtime games were boring because nobody wanted to take any chances.
Yeah.
The thing I'm surprised about is how much I like what I thought at first was a gimmick in Major League Baseball with the extra inning rule of the man on second to start the inning. And I thought when they did this, like, this is stupid. Okay. After about a week last year, it's like, this is exciting. All of a sudden, we've got a chance as armchair managers to decide what should we do here. Should we sacrifice? Should we? There's just a whole variety of possibilities that come in, depending on whether you're at home or on the road. What the batting order looks like, who's on second. It's terrific. Again, I don't want to see it in the playoffs because I think there you can't. It's like, to me, deciding soccer games on penalty kicks, which, it's fine, except when the real big games come around. You should never have a game decided that way. That's just a skills competition that involves a lot of luck. So I don't want to see any changes to traditional formats come playoff time. But for the regular season, I have become a huge fan of the man on second rule.
Jimmy Gemma checking in. He says minor leagues has it, and it is a good rule. So
Yeah,
doing it down there at the minor league clubs. So let's keep it in baseball. I brought a gift for you today.
you did.
Yeah, we want to talk a little old school. Steve likes when we talk old school shit.
All right.
This will take you back. I still have in my possession, and I pull this out because there's a few of them in here I've followed and I like to use. And there's a play tomorrow, as a matter of fact, but thought you'd get a kick out of this.
Oh, Mike Lee's betting. Yeah, it was a good primer.
Yeah.
It really was. It was for somebody who had never bet baseball before. Mike wrote a book with some fundamental betting.
And it's just it's simple stuff. I mean, this is when did this come out, Dave? In the
it's going to be in, I would say, late 70s, maybe early
1981.
80s. Oh, okay.
Dedicated to Leo Minucci, the man who gave me my introduction into the handicapping field. 1981, Mike Lee. And so, guys, and this is usually in reprint down at the Gamblers Book Club. I don't know, what is that? They're not calling it that. Gamblers Shop, whatever it's called.
Gamblers Bookshop.
The historic Gamblers Book Club. But yeah,
I'm ashamed to admit it, as I've become more and more online oriented. I have not visited the store in many, many years.
I usually make my annual trip, even though you can order it online or and have Phil send you the annuals. That's my way of getting down there and still at least patron.
Yeah, I order everything online.
Yeah,
I do. I become. I'm locked into 21st century technology, and I'm glad I am. I mean, I write like 2 checks a month.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's 1. There's 1 check I still write. So I have checks that should basically last me the rest of my life.
I think I have checks of the rest. I think I've written 2. The only time I actually have to write a check lately is if I buy a stock. I got to send in a check.
Okay.
My stockbroker, get it in the mail. So, but let me ask you this. So of this book, there's 3 systems or 3 things to follow that out of this book that I still to this day will look at the price, then implement it into the handicapping of the day when I love looking at the starting pitchers and those things. But and I'm just curious, before I tell you what those 3 are, is there anything outside your numbers that you have that you come up with in the pitching handicapping you do, but something that you've done since way back when that you still do that applies to any old school MLB betting systems?
No.
None.
No, none. Because I'm not a systems guy, for one thing.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a matchup guy. And 2 is I embraced analytics way before most people.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not saying that as a bragging point, but I became aware of them quite some time ago and discovered Fangraphs. And it's like, oh, okay, Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, and you just get better reads. Now there are exceptions, but I know how to spot them because most of the analytics, particularly when they come to pitchers, there is a bias to pitchers who get a lot of strikeouts. And sometimes, I know he didn't pitch well, he ran out of gas tonight or whatever. He didn't pitch particularly well tonight. But Dallas Keuchel, for instance, is not very well rated analytically, but he's a good pitcher. I mean, he gets a lot of ground balls, he gets a lot of soft contact, and that stuff doesn't sometimes get measured into XFIP and FIP and Sierra. So there are, I'm still looking at each pitcher individually and finding their strengths and weaknesses. But no, I am very much a starting pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Handicapper, which is why I play mostly first 5 inning bets. Okay. I haven't made a full game bet yet, and I will make some, but the majority of my plays, I would say at least 70% of my plays are now first 5 innings. I don't want these bullpens, even the good ones. I don't want to get involved in them. They're too volatile. And as an example, I mean, it's obviously one day and a little fluky, but on Thursday, yesterday. I played 2 games, 2 first fives. I won one, and I pushed one. Had I played 9 innings, I'd have gone 0-2. So if I needed any reassurance that my way is the right way, based on my methodology going in, that was it. And if you are keying on starting pitching, I don't know why you'd play anything other than a first 5, because that's basically more often than not, it's going to determine whether you win or lose.
And the when you say, so people understand, because I know what you're talking about as far as one of the first. I mean, people think of analytics, they think of everything that's at their fingertips and availability online. But
which is like
when Dave talks about being a part of it when it first started, that's back to days of the computer boys when everyone was making there. You were having to input a lot of your own stuff in whatever sport you were handicapping in, and create your own analytics, not just follow them.
There's still people do that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what do you remember from back then? Those days when the computer screen was black and it was orange or green, print, and there was no internet. It was you were inputting systems.
Oh, well, I don't think there were any real analytics back then.
You were just with the computers were just what were they doing? Printing out power ratings with projected point spreads using statistics.
I honestly don't remember. It's so long ago.
Yeah, I know that. Well, whatever they were, I thought that that's what they were inputting to create their power.
I did everything longhand. I basically back then, if you're going back to the 1990s, I power rated every player in baseball. Just created my own power rating for them based on the obvious stats. Okay. And you couldn't get lineups. So I would project the lineup the night before. I would look for the box scores because I wanted to see what the bullpen usage was. So I had to wait for the newspaper to come out. I mean, it's the dark ages.
The old school way of doing
things.
Listen,
I still remember when I lived on the East Coast, it was just betting.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous because you often didn't get the box score even in the morning paper from the West Coast games.
Yeah.
So there's like, now what do I do? Because
did they do a late addition to print, or that was it?
In my city, the Providence Journal was the morning paper. The Evening Bulletin was the night paper, and the Evening Bulletin was like the ugly stepchild. So I don't even remember what they had in there. And by that time, it was too late anyway. So, it was just, it is so much. The old rule was that, and there's still some people who subscribe to this. They're not right. The old rule was that maybe 2% of sports bettors earned a long-term profit. And I think it was accurate back then because the books had a huge advantage. The advantage isn't as great now. And I know you still hear people saying it's 2%. It's more than 2%. Okay. I can tell you it's more than 2%. It's not like 50% or anything like that. But
people are making money in baseball.
I think you can make a case. It's not just baseball, across the board. I think you can make a case that, and I'm not talking about $5 and $10 parlay bettors. Okay, don't include them in the mix.
Right.
In terms of people who wager seriously on a daily basis, I think the number's considerably higher in terms of those who are able to turn a net profit from year to year. It's not 25%.
Right.
But I'd wager it's more. I would say it's a solid 10%.
People that are putting in that daily work. I know that a lot of the groups will shut down, after March Madness or at the end of the NBA regular season. They won't even mess with the playoffs. Some stick around, and then you got 1 or 2 or 3 major groups that are going 12 months a year, betting groups, and I don't even know how that operates anymore.
I can tell you this, because I do get the action. I still get a lot of contacts around the country, and I can tell you that the real sharp math syndicates, they're done in college basketball. They don't. That's why even though that Houston line is a bit, the Baylor Houston line is higher than the analytics would indicate. That's why the numbers guys have it. That for them, they're pretty much. I'm not saying all of them, but I talked yesterday with a book back east who, and they're huge. They're enormous. They handle whatever you want to get. They can bet. And they're it's like, nah, this is the public's taking over here. That's they might get some big wagers, but it's not coming from the respected groups. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I think that's the same in a lot of not so much in the NFL, because the NFL they'll keep firing, but I think in other sports that's the case to some extent.
I'll tell you the three ones that I take a look at every year. So the first one is the pitching rematch. It's got to happen within 7 days. There are usually times if the 7th day falls, let's say on the first game of the 3-game series, I would extend it to 10 because they're within that series. But the pitching rematch where you got 2 starting pitchers, the loser of the first game, if he was the loser of record, not the losing team. So pitcher A versus pitcher B, and pitcher B's team lose, but he doesn't get the loss, then it's off. If he took the loss and those 2 starters rematch within a week, the series was within 1 week, you play on the pitcher that lost.
Okay. That doesn't
happen.
That probably doesn't come up as much as it used to, because starting pitchers are not in the game nearly as long now as they were in 1981.
Yeah, no, and the
So
openers
they don't factor in as many decisions.
The openers don't do us any favors. Now you have the virgin pitcher, guy who's never stepped on a mound, not making his first start. He's had a couple of bullpen sessions, or he's been in relief for an inning. Step into the mound for the very first time for his major league debut. That's in there too as well.
Is that a go with or go against?
You go with them, and you may. I actually charted it last year when I was writing for Gaming Today, and I would every maybe 2 months. Excuse me, not last year, the year before, because last year we didn't start until July 27th. But I charted it, and every month and a half I may update it, or at the bottom before my picks I put the notes updating that one because I mentioned it in a preseason column. And if you think about it, as long as you hit between 50 and 55% with that during a run, you're going to make money, because 9 out of 10 times that virgin pitcher is catching plus money. So it's profitable. You just have to, pay attention. And there are times where they're not listed overnight. So you have to look in case of a pitching change, or if it's a to be determined starter, so on and so forth. They don't know if they're going with an opener. So those are things to look at, but there are good times to jump on that. So I keep an eye on that one. And then the other one is just the magical 4 team that's won 3 in a row. And the 4th win in a row would be at home. The first 3 wins didn't have to be at home. It's just that 4th game. They're playing at home. They've won 3 in a row. You play on them. That's in there too as the magical 4th, I believe it's called.
Does that work? I have my doubts about that one.
I haven't charted it.
I remember having my doubts about that one, because I do recall it now. When I first read it, it's like, I don't know about that one. That's kind of jumping in on a streak that's already taking place.
Yeah.
To me, if you're gonna play a team that's streaking, you want to be on the streak at the beginning. And if you're not, you just treat it like just another game.
Casey Raleigh Mantis. How about Trevor Bauer going from a no-no to giving up 4 runs, 2 home runs in the 7th?
At Colorado, yeah.
At Colorado.
That can happen in a hurry in Colorado.
That could happen real quick in the Mile High City, that's for sure.
Yeah, he gassed a little bit, and that was the end of it. That game did produce the incident of the night, by the way.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The cat got on the field, and this poor cat, he ran like an 880, and he was seriously stressed out because he was panting, which you don't often see a cat do. And then he got up and started to take off again, but they caught him. And hopefully he'll be placed in a no-kill shelter, and we'll find a nice home to enjoy his life.
Casey Raleigh, no, it was not a black cat. He asked. He was
gray. It looked like a gray, long-haired tabby.
Yeah, and what's funny is that picture was surfacing and that tweet was being sent out and retweeted just about the same time as the Arizona Wildcats were, and I think their mascot, right? They have a male and a female cat, walking around, and I want to say it's gray, but they were the women's team, the 11 seed was knocking off Connecticut to get to the national championship, make it an all Pac-12 championship. I kind of
really, I didn't know the Pac. I don't follow women's college basketball at all, so I know nothing about it. So the Pac-12 is the conference had a great NCAA women's tournament run as well, evidently.
Yes, I covered that. I covered the Pac-12 women's tournament last month at Mandalay Bay. Championship night, Mark Davis comes walking in. So I bullshitted with him for a minute, and he had just, bought the Aces 2 months earlier. And he looked at me, he started laughing. He said, "Man, I'm here to scout." So he got to watch the Pac-12 championship, and which was Stanford UCLA. And now he get a chance to, if he's paying attention, I'm sure he is. We'll watch Stanford in Arizona. We have a chance. Las Vegas has a chance to have 2 players, one male, one female, in playing for a national championship. Sam Thomas plays for Arizona. She played at National Powerhouse Centennial. And then we got Julian Strother, who, his minutes have been sparse, but he understands that. But he got some time in the regular season. But with Gonzaga, which we both think's going to run away with this, so it would be that would be fun to see. We've had the last I want to say we've had some women players go to the Final Four. I don't know if locals have won it. I know the last time Stanford was in it, UNLV Lady Rebels coach Lindy LaRocque played for the title with Stanford. They lost to UConn, I believe. And of course, we've had Greg Anthony. So to have 2 high school products playing for a national championship, one male, one female, would be absolutely fun to see, especially for the local residents, local hoop fans. So we had a cat on the field. We had the Wildcats in the championship,
and we had another. I think we had another mountain lion.
So captured, right? 60-pounder?
Yes, captured and sedated and relocated. So good job. Good job. We don't, it's not the cat's fault that, we've kind of moved into his dominion. And so they're straying, and that cat looked like he wasn't eating real well, to be honest with you. So hopefully they'll put him someplace where he can get plenty of food and live a nice life. I was hoping they wouldn't have to kill it.
Yeah, no, that was good to hear. Like you said, the further we move out, the outskirts of town. I mean, you and I have been here since this was a burial ground for one outfit, allegedly. So at least I know where I'm at. There was if you watch certain movies, that's the that's what's implied.
I don't think that's exaggerated either.
Yeah.
I mean, because back then it was that was so far away.
Yeah,
this will never get found. Well, it probably still will never get found, but it's possible that there might be a building over it at this point.
I always tell this story is I want to say I was 5-6 years old, and you take the 15 to Craig Road, and you get off on Craig, and you take a left, you head west off the 15, and when you turned left, you just saw nothing but desert. Absolutely. I mean, when I say desert, I'm talking Zizek's Road, Vegas to California desert. And there was a certain point that you just knew to turn off. You could see the tires had worn into that's where you drove into the desert and you disappear. And at a certain point, you turn around and you couldn't see the road. And within 2 minutes, you look and it just opened up in this huge valley.
Yes.
And it was Williams Raceway. It was a BMX racetrack.
Really?
And it was wild. And the guy that ran it had this old turquoise jalopy. I'll never forget. It looked like a Sanford and Son truck. And in the side of it was a bolt with the circle on it, and he had it screwed in with a heavy duty band, and he pulled it all the way back and you'd be like this with your hands on the handlebars and the helmet and the visor, and all you'd see is that rubber band. And the second it disappeared, he'd let go. That's when you knew to take off. and we'd go out to that desert every Saturday. And your faceplate on your BMX bike was how you ranked. They would send out the newsletter once a month.
It still boggles my mind at times because when I moved out here, city basically ended at Arville.
Yeah.
Just just past the railroad tracks. That was the end of it. And I mean, Rainbow, when I moved out here to this part of town, Rainbow was 2 lanes. And had all kinds of dips in it and stuff like that. You could scare the crap out of a date if you knew the road and you could take it fast at night. And there's no lights.
Yep.
I mean, you could, I knew where the dips were. And I just the hell of it. It used to just scare the hell out of them because I'd be rolling along pretty well and just hit one of those dips and basically get airborne and freak out. And it was like, excuse me.
The only thing when we moved back, because I left for Florida in '82 for about 8 months, then we ended up in Minneapolis for a couple of years. And when we moved back here in May of 1985, Spring Valley was built. Rainbow and Flamingo was relevant. Spring Valley was there. And the only thing on Rainbow until you got to Westcliff, there was a 76 station on Charleston. The McDonald's that's still there on Sahara and Rainbow was there, and the 7-Eleven. That was it on those 2 corners. The McDonald's and 7-Eleven.
Where like Spring Valley Hospital is.
Oh, that was desert.
It was nothing.
There was nothing there. But if you got to Blue Diamond, there were isolated homes that lived off wells. They had to pump their water.
Well, and there were actually some isolated homes even out in the Rainbow area. They were basically farms.
No, that was Spring. Well, way out
there. I would tell you that when I moved to this neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, this went on for a couple of years. There was a rooster every friggin' morning. That wasn't that far away at one of the houses, and it's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, they were there already. I still remember that for me, this was absolute shock. In 1989, I still remember the girl too. Her name was Vanessa. And we decided to go back to her place. And it's like, okay, well, where do you live? And she go, I just moved into a new place at Sahara in Fort Apache. And I'm looking at her going, Fort Apache? There's nothing out there. I mean, what the? And I got out there, and sure enough, there was an apartment complex that I didn't even know existed, and there's a small shopping plaza where we ended up going for bagels in the morning. And I was shocked. It's like I never thought they'd build out this far. I remember thinking, God, I mean, look, we're practically at the mountains, which we weren't.
Yeah.
They were still out in the distance. And now Fort Apache is basically the middle of the city. So, I mean, it is just amazing, absolutely incredible for anybody who's been out here for a long time to see how the grid, because we're still a grid, how the grid has enlarged. It's incredible.
That when we moved back that corner, Flamingo and Rainbow, that's pretty much as far as you wanted to go, because Spring Valley, you went into the homes. If you went west on Flamingo, it was only 1 block to turn into those homes, or you went down Rainbow to go in the main entrance. But if you went a quarter mile further, you'd hit a dead end with Tenaya, and then it was desert after that. And I was a senior in high school in '85. We disappear in that little area, and that's where the keg would be, or the bonfire. That was on Flamingo and Tenaya. There's a DMV out there now. There's all west, all that southwest. You get to the 250, completely built up, Lotus, all that. So to think that when I moved back, and to think that before I left here in 82, 81, you didn't have any reason to drive past the 15 on Flamingo. You got to Valley View and it dead ended. So realistically, you were making a choice to get on that freeway, and that was in 82.
I think it was
on Flamingo.
I think it was you remember Fred from GMF Motors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Fred, if I can finance him, and I will. Okay.
Yeah.
He made the corniest commercials you've ever seen. He went into the nightclub business. I don't remember the name of the place. I don't name it Fred's. I have no idea. But he built it at, I think it was Decatur and Trop, I think. And I remember when he first opened, it was like, who the hell is going to go all the way out there?
No.
So,
There
and
was,
as it turned out, nobody, because it
Yeah,
didn't
no.
do very well and kind of went away.
the only one back then, 85, 86, there were still no hotel nightclubs. And the
No.
most popular one then, 85, 86, Botany's was still around on East Flamingo,
Yep.
but then you had Tramps on West Flamingo. And there was only the AM/PM that's caddy corner from that Bourbon Street Lounge. That used to be Tramps. That was there, but there was no Palms. There was the Gold Coast. There was no Rio yet.
No.
And
Rio wasn't until about what, 90?
yeah, closer
Maybe
to
a
that.
year or
And
two
then
before that, something like that.
yeah, that's where. And then the second they introduced the Voodoo Lounge, they just started that. They transitioned. The people that don't realize that the Rio transitioned a lot of things for the nightlife in this town. They had that that rooftop bar, and they were the hotel with the very first hotel nightclub ever, Club Rio. You had the Shark Club and Palladium that brought in the bigger with the light trellises that sort of gave you the feel of LA and New York combined. The Studio 54 that eventually Vegas had a Studio 54 and the Mets. But back then, we were used to those intimate, nightclubs or bars and piano bars or whatever it may be. The Elephant Bar.
There were no celebrity DJs back then.
Yeah, no. The only DJs around back then that had a name were the guys that somewhat introduced the hip hop dance culture to Las Vegas. And there was one in '81 was DJ Frankie, and he had the City nightclub that was above the Commercial Center's playland, the roller skating rink.
I know the place. I never went there.
It's called the City. And then he was doing on 91.5 KUMB. They were doing some mix shows. Him, a guy named Heard Him Bad, he went by, Hypo Scott, and then Dino, who ended up making some records in the mid '80s. Him and DJ Rob and DJ Frankie, they did this mix. So those guys sort of built their name, and they started going to Lake Havasu on spring break, which now is like the big deal on MTV. But back then, the local DJs in Las Vegas is where they got their spring break entertainment. And there was no MTV to give it coverage. And then they started bringing music acts that Frankie was producing the music or Rob was producing the music, and they perform. And they bring dancers, and then they do the guest DJ thing. And 4 or 5 years later, all of a sudden, MTV caught on of these crowds that were going to spring break, and they started filming it live and going out there every day. It was like Super Bowl week, but it was spring break week on MTV in Havasu, and they'd be live. They'd have fucking platform set up, people broadcasting, talking about it. It was wild, but a lot of that entertainment started from the Las Vegas DJs, who they were it. They were your celebrity and resident DJs. So that was we talked about it. Those are the good days. Those are the fun times. Now the town's just you got to pay me to drive into town if I'm going to cover something.
But it's still a good city to live in.
Oh yeah, overall, sure.
Yeah, it's still a lot of pluses. A lot of pluses.
Well, guys like us have learned to enjoy and embrace everything else, that comes with Las Vegas, and we understand it and know it.
If you still want a fillet at 1 a.m, you can still get it.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the good things about Las Vegas. It's the midnight hour. I got baseball.
Yep, we have hit it. Good show. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for coming in. I don't know if Steve's still in his deal, but I'm sure he'll come in and shut it down. So Dave, he's good luck on those this weekend.
He's probably looking to draft guys who went to have some Rutgers connection. There must be a few of them. That's it.
All right. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.